Hey kids, from Stone's Corner in Brisbane, Queensland. This is Gimme Empathy. I'm your host, Scott Mercer. I've had some good weekends recently. So after last episode, I played at the Sonic Masala Festival 2018, which is a little local festival. I say a festival. It happens in a bowls club across just 2 stages. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of local bands and a few interstate people, but it's my home scene. It's Christmas for me, really, because I not big on the shopping or the Jesus. So this is my Christmas, and everyone I know is always there, and there's excellent music. And this year I got to play with my band Slumlord and also do a radio broadcast for 4ZZZ. Both of them were really fun, interviewed some people, drank, I would say, plenty of beers, but not too many. Kept going with the free tea that they had in the gaming room. Had a great time. My personal highlights were probably Bad Bangers, who are one of my favourite local bands, and ModCon, who are from Melbourne. And people have been telling me about this band for a while, and I've been like, oh yeah, sure. Just one of those recommendations that's a bit in one ear and out the other. But I actually saw them and they were fucking amazing. And everyone around was like, that was fucking amazing. So go check out ModCon. They're terrific. This weekend past, I went to a wedding. One of my past guests got married, J.M. Denellen from episode 6. Married the wonderful Hannah at a lovely ceremony out in a kind of like a country town hall sort of thing, not too far from Brisbane. And also former guest Caitlin Pliley was there. And we all caught up and got a photo together. That's up on the Gimme Empathy Facebook page and Instagram feed, if you want to check that out. On the podcast this week is another returning guest, Angela Hibbard, who you might remember from episode 4, which is so long ago now. It's about a year ago, but a lot of episodes, so many episodes. Ange plays with me in Harley Young and the Haymakers. She's on bass, I'm on guitar. And we also used to play in my old band, Go Go Fish. And Ange messaged me a while back and asked to come back on the podcast because she had some questions for me about the concept of empathy and what effect that this podcast had on my way of thinking. And so I thought that will be interesting. And so I had her back on. I actually thought I would have a lot more repeat guests by now. I think it's cool to like introduce people, and so you can kind of get to know who they are, and then later on go a bit deeper or a bit more esoteric or just a bit sillier in some of the conversations we can have. And so this episode's a bit of that. Spoiler alert for this episode. There are spoilers for the movie Avengers Infinity War near the end, as well as some late 80s Godzilla movies. If you're very concerned about that, then tune out after about the hour mark. What else? Oh, at one point, Ange starts talking about her friend Ash. So this Ash is the same Ash from episode 1 of this podcast. She's the drummer in Harley Young and the Haymakers, and is pretty much a lifelong friend of Ange's. So that's the context for that. Right, so without any further context, here is episode number 40 with Angela Hibbard. For a sound check. Yeah, so where were you driving today?
So today I was picking up kids from Mount Gravatt High, and I took them around to the rock climbing centre on Kessels Road, and then I had to do a U-turn and drop them at the trampoline centre. And then I went and hid and parked my bus for an hour and read my book and... Yes, and then I went back and picked him up and took him back to school.
Wait, there's a trampoline centre somewhere in Brisbane.
Yes, it's called Sky Zone, and it's in McGregor. It's off Kessels Road, near the intersection of Kessels Road and Mains Road. think it's near a Mercedes dealership. But yeah, there's this place called Sky Zone, which is just trampolines.
This is what happens when 90s kids grow up. You get places called Sky Zone where it's a trampoline center.
Yeah, and it's just basically the floor is trampolines. And you just jump around, and you can do this for school sport. You just jump around for an hour.
You could do that for sport?
That's what I was doing today. I took high school kids, not even like little kindy kids or junior kids or anything, high school kids to jump around on trampolines for an hour.
I would have been so much more of an active child if we got to go to trampoline centers.
I know. Or bouldering. Instead, we had to go and play stupid netball.
And T-ball.
T-ball, oh. Yeah, that was mostly my opportunity for like sitting in the outfield and making daisy chains.
Yeah. My friend and I once defected to the other team in an inter-school game of T-ball. We defected to an all-girls school team because we were just tired of playing. It was a pretty radical act at the time.
Yeah, radical act of rebellion. That's like the time that Ash and I sat out a fun run at our school. Like, we just hid in the bushes. We were like, would anyone care if we didn't do 6 laps? Let's just hide.
Can we please just not have fun today? That's not what we're about.
We were fine with the funning. We were just
not the running.
Not so big on the running, yeah.
But so for the listener, Ange, if they haven't heard your first episode, how do we know each other?
So we know each other because we were in a band called Go-Go Fish, and it was equal parts love and passion and pain. And then I went to Japan, Go-Go Fish ended, and you joined every other band in Brisbane. Mm-hmm. And then I came back from Japan. Oh, there is an episode. You've got an episode of me from when I was living in Japan.
Yep.
And then I came back to Australia, and I'm still looking to study the piano tuning, but for the moment, I'm driving buses to make money because we all need money.
And we still play in a band together.
We're still playing a band together.
Harley Young and the Haymakers.
Harley Young and the Haymakers, yep. Just released
single. Counting Song single. Just recorded an album, just did a tour.
Yep.
And now you're playing bass.
I'm playing bass.
Because Murray's out.
I know. This is the second time I've usurped Murray. I'm just riding Murray's coattails.
On the bass, yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, like, Murray will be, promoted to, I don't know, what's the big band? Powderfinger or something.
Sure.
And then he'll be kicked out of Powderfinger, and they'll go, "Hey, Ange."
Well, we've joked before you should go along to bear hunt gigs and just like death stare him and like, soon.
Yeah, Murray just walks out on stage, and I just kind of creep out from behind the amp going, "Hello."
So you came back to Australia. You got back your bus driving job again.
Yep.
And that's been going good?
Yeah, I've been enjoying it more than I did the first time around.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think, well, number one, I think I am the kind of person that likes to be good at things. Like, learning any skill is going to take time, and something like bus driving that is so much about kind of, now this may not make sense, but you have to react to people's body language like in a split second. So if you look at people at a bus stop, okay, if you want a bus, you're supposed to stick your arm up and hail. Mm-hmm. Does everyone do that? No. Some people who aren't used to the hailing system, like they'll just kind of see the bus and then they'll turn around away from the bus and walk to the front of the stop.
Right.
And to a driver who's not sure what they're doing, they might be like, "Oh, what's happening? I should just go." And then the person turns around and they're like, "Hey, where'd my bus go?" And so for me, like, I feel now that I'm better able to kind of anticipate those non-verbal cues.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And I can kind of spot now if people want a bus, even if they're not hailing. Like if they're kind of looking down at their phones and, you know, they haven't seen me, usually I will actually stop at the stop. And by then, like the person looks up and they go, shit, my bus! You know?
I guess it's better to err on the side of stopping, right?
I find so. You know, some drivers will tell you different, and they're usually the drivers that you don't want driving you, you know?
Well, I guess it could depend on if your route is running late or not.
Yeah.
If you try and make up time, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes that does come into it. But, like, usually the way I look at it is, you know, I'm a public servant. I should, you know, serve the public. I'm getting paid the same if I, you know, slow down and pick you up as if I speed past you and you're angry at me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And if I pick you up, then we're both having a good day because, you know, you're so happy you got the bus. I'm happy to take you, you know.
Well, the psychology of bus driving is actually interesting. We didn't talk about this last time because you're still living in Japan, just visiting. Mm-hmm. But I'm a big fan of buses. I'd say they're my preferred form of transport, not just public, but transport, full stop. I don't really like driving. So specifically with the thing about hailing buses. So I will usually hail the bus, but there are circumstances in which I won't. Say, for example, it's a busy busway stop, and other people are clearly milling to the direction of where the bus is. Like, I probably wouldn't in that case. If I'm like all the way out in the middle of nowhere, I'm the only one there. Absolutely, I will. I will be out there waving like a maniac. Now, this is a question I have for you. Would you say that the bus driver's acknowledgement that they've seen you hailing when they turn the indicator on? Because that's what I normally take. I will stand hailing if it's a hailing situation. I will continue hailing until the bus has turned its indicator on. Otherwise, I'll be concerned they've missed me.
Usually, yes. Sometimes, for example, let's say, okay, there's a street like where people would turn left between the bus and the bus stop.
Ah, yes, fair enough.
The bus driver may not turn their left indicator on because it would just weird the fuck out of the cars.
Because the cars behind them might think they're turning onto the street, whereas no, they're going to be stopping after the street.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I understand that. Yeah.
So in that case, I might just give like one little flick of my left indicator and then just keep going without the indicator on.
Ah, okay.
Which some people get and some people don't.
I don't know if I would catch that necessarily.
Yeah, some people don't catch it. They're like hailing, and then I put my indicator on quickly, and they're like put their hand down, and then I take my indicator off, and they're like, put their hand back up
because they're like,
slowly.
Oh, maybe she thought I wasn't hailing the bus after all.
Yeah. Oh, she thought I wasn't hailing because I put my hand down.
Yeah,
it's like, no,
yeah.
I saw you. It's okay. I'm coming to get you. Don't worry.
Next question about bus driver passenger etiquette. Do they tell you that you should greet and say goodbye to people when they embark and disembark?
Okay. Yes, they do. Also, it used to be the motto. It used to be part of the motto of the company was the friendliest bus company in the world. And that was our goal. You know, like when you went through the training school, they were like, okay, this is the company, this is our ethos, and our motto is the friendliest bus company in the world. That's why when you get on, you see pictures saying smile and say good day, because bus drivers were sick of, you know, sitting there going, hello, and people just getting on and going, meh, and not saying anything or not giving eye contact. And yeah, that happens every day.
So wait, are these pictures that say, where are they?
They usually like just inside the bus, you know, like where there'd be things saying, please have a valid ticket for entry.
Okay.
You know, sometimes they're on the walls, sometimes they're on the floor. Yeah, sometimes they're on the roof.
I think I may be doing something bad because I avoid eye contact with bus drivers so much they haven't even seen those signs.
Oh! Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, so I should be.
Don't apologize to me.
I should. You're a bus driver.
Apologize to your driver.
So okay. So what is the next step? Because I don't. I'm bad at casual, brief interactions at best of times. What is the least I can get away with and still be considered adequately polite when I get on a bus?
Well, usually like eye contact and a little bit of a smile is nice,
Okay, I can do that.
Some people even kind of mouth hi.
Sometimes I do that. Like if they say, yeah, if they greet me, I'll be, and because I'll usually have headphones in, and I'll be like, as I go by, like
Yeah.
I'm that thing where you're moving through onto the bus, and you don't quite have time to think of a greeting. And, yeah, okay, maybe I should have something in mind I say every single time.
Yes.
Or just a thing I like, make a commitment every time, at least make the eye contact and like smile and nod or something.
Yeah, or like the sup bro kind of backwards head
Yeah.
nod,
Okay.
Yeah, that's something really simple that you can do, and just at least just acknowledge that they're human beings, They've all got families. They've all got loved ones. They're not just little robots. They're humans,
I guess this is the thing because it's one of those situations where I was trying to put myself in their shoes. And if I drove a bus, and I've thought of driving buses before at various points, I would not want anyone to acknowledge me. I would rather, like driving a train would be ideal because you don't even see the passengers.
Yeah.
But so I guess most people are not like that and would prefer this human eye contact acknowledgement thing you're talking about.
Yeah. I think most bus drivers are naturally social people, I would say. There are some that are kind of antisocial, but most of them are naturally good with people because, like, the way we're recruited is kind of for our customer service skills.
Right, okay.
Because it's not just like a heavy vehicle driving job. It's also a customer service job. It's one of those ones that kind of crosses the line between two different industries,
Yeah.
And so a lot of bus drivers in particular, like they're social people who are kind of starved of a lot of people contact,
Oh, okay, because they are doing this all day, like having hundreds or thousands of people streaming by them with very little actual contact.
Yeah. And you don't really get to have a conversation with anyone, And like you do have to concentrate while you drive. But one of the few moments that you're not driving is when you stop to stop kind of welcoming people onto the bus, and just, having a little social, happy interaction just kind of, makes your day a bit better.
How do you feel about the weirdos who sit right up the front and talk to you while you're driving?
Oh, thankfully there's less of those now because there's a sign in that seat saying, "This is the silent seat."
I noticed that sign.
Yeah, that was put there because, a lot of old ladies who were also, social people who were starved of contact, had a tendency to sit in the front and have, chats with the driver. I didn't mind the occasional conversation, but it does sort of throw you off what you're doing, which is driving, I do find, like, often the uniform that I wear kind of makes people trust me automatically. So even when I'm not behind the wheel, like if I'm just out at the supermarket, like old people will come up and have a conversation with me and say, "Yeah, I've been in Australia for 35 years and I came from Vietnam and hey, do you want a recipe for sauerkraut?" And yeah. Oh God, yeah. I've got a friend and he was trying to disarm an IUD and I was supposed to do it and I've got hepatitis A and so
An IUD or an IED?
IED. The other one is an
inter-uterine device.
That's right. He was trying to disarm a contraceptive and it exploded. The woman was fine, but my friend, he lost a leg.
We lost 3 men that day.
You know, some good men that day in that vagina. Can you use that?
Can I cut it is the question. I mean, obviously that guy that day couldn't.
No! Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Do you want some tea, Ange?
Yeah.
Do-da, do-da. Yeah, what was your other story?
Oh, I was going to say, like, little kids feel that they can just automatically trust me because I'm in a bus driver uniform. So, like, I mean, it's not just, like, kids who get on the bus. You know, I've had little sort of 6-year-olds get on the bus with a bag from school and go, I got all this. Like, I'm supposed to know what they did that day. And I'm like, did you? That's fantastic, you know. But also, like, when I catch buses in my uniform, I've somehow managed to make friends with the kids that catch the bus that goes past my house. Mm-hmm. Because there's about 3 little kids. It's a primary school. And they'd be under the age of about 7. And they all get on together. And one day I got on and this little girl who was real, you know, like the talkative one, she just kind of turns to me and goes, do you know what these are? She had these little kind of streamers made of paper. And I was like, oh, I don't know. They kind of look like cheerleader pom-poms. And she said, yeah, they're cheerleader pom-poms. I'm going to start a cheerleading group at my school and it's going to be called the Lollipop Girls. And and then, like, the deluge kind of started, and all the other kids started asking me questions too, like, what bus did you drive today? What bus did you drive yesterday? What bus did you drive tomorrow? You know, where do you live? Do you live over there? Do you live in a big house? Do you have kids?
Have you always inspired that even before you were a bus driver, though?
Yeah, like back when I was teaching kids in Japan, you know, like, kids, my students would just run up to me in the street and give me big hugs. You know, That's not an understatement. Like, I was out with Eric at a festival once and I saw one of my former students playing, and I just kind of sort of cocked my head at her and she looked at me and went, Angela! And she kind of ran up to me and gave me a big hug, and I was like, oh, yeah. Kana-chan. Yeah.
I think you kind of inspire that among small children and the elderly anyway. Like, there's
small children and the elderly. Yeah. Everyone in between couldn't care less. Pretty much. Like, yeah, fair enough, you know. I mean, I hold sway over the far edges of the population, and, you know, the people in the middle can see through my, you know, whimsical smile and, you know, banter. Moderately amusing banter. But yeah, there was one incident though. I was in the car. Eric was driving and we were going out of...
Eric's your partner?
Eric's my partner, yeah. And we were leaving a shopping centre and we were just kind of sitting in the queue to go out of the shopping centre, and hanging around outside the entrance to the shopping centre, there were these kids from a local high school smoking cigarettes. And I was just sort of looking over at them going, oh, I wonder what they're doing. And then all of a sudden one of the kids saw me and went, and immediately sort of jumped up and tried to put the cigarette out because he kind of saw my uniform.
All right.
And I was like, did someone see him? And then I sort of realised it was me.
You saw him.
I saw him.
Authority figure Angela
in her bus driving uniform had seen him. And he was terrified. And then he kind of thought about it for a second and he was like, okay. And then he sort of sat back down and sort of said something to his friends, and his friends all came over and looked at me. And then hid.
That's so funny. Yeah, you inspire small children and the elderly, and you're the bane of cigarette-smoking teenagers.
Yes. Yeah. I am just the symbol of authority for a very small section of the community. Some people it's the police, for others it's bus drivers, Yeah.
So, Ange, you're here tonight because you have some questions for me that you want to ask.
Yes, that's right. I mean, like I say questions, I've made all these notes of things that I wanted to talk about, and now I'm not even sure if we'll get around to all of it. But basically the main question I wanted to ask was, so this podcast, what originally inspired you to start this podcast?
Well, it's called Gimme Empathy, and originally it was because I found I wasn't understanding why people do the things they do on on a micro and a macro level, like people I know, people I don't know, people with a lot of power, people with no power. And yeah, it was just an experiment, I guess, to get to know people in my life better and understand why they do things the way they do a bit better.
And do you think that it's made you more empathetic?
I think in some ways, but then I'm not sure if it's only made me more sympathetic. I guess, I don't know how many you've listened to, but...
not as many as I should have.
That's all right.
Let's be honest.
But it's one of the things that surprised me a little is just like how many people I know. And I would say I'm a pretty average person with a normal range of people I know of age groups and interests and occupations, although a lot of them are musicians. But a lot of people have stuff going on, like bad health problems in particular. And bad stuff has happened to a lot of people. And that's, stuff that you don't necessarily get to know unless you sit down and talk to someone for an hour and a half with a microphone in front of them. So I think I would like to think I'm better at listening to people now.
Yeah, the bad stuff is kind of the stuff that you don't talk about unless you're kind of made to talk about it, really.
Yeah, or you're very drunk. Yeah.
Yes.
And some people don't do that anyway.
Yeah. Some people they just get into fights,
Yeah.
They don't even talk about it. But when you're kind of young, you're sort of told that, you only tell your close circle this, or this is private information. And maybe it's not. Maybe we should all, air some of our dirty laundry.
I'm not exactly sure where that comes from, though. Like, I don't remember being told that. I think it was the case that I felt that, but I don't know why.
Oh, I can remember it coming from my peers when I was at school, because I'm a chronic oversharer. Like my family are just chronic oversharers, so I'd grown up, only talking to other members of my family. And so when I got to school, there were people there who weren't my family, and I kind of had to learn all these new sort of social rules and this new kind of social contract.
Like there's some things you're not supposed to tell absolutely everyone.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like how enjoyable it is to poop,
Yeah.
I didn't know that you weren't supposed to say something like that.
No one talks about that. Hey, yeah. One guy talked to me about that once, and I was like, I can't handle this. I can't admit this truth. I don't know him well enough.
Oh, God, the best thing. It's like there's endorphins in your bum hole. It's so enjoyable. But, and yet, you're not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because it's kind of that social contract.
Yeah, and I think another thing, like with friendships, it's normally, or at least in friendships I've had, you talk about what you do, not who you are, I guess. And this sort of thing inspires people to have a bit more self-examination, perhaps, like when you're asking pointed questions of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. Like, and even in, romantic relationships, like not just friendships, but romantic relationships as well, you don't want to kind of talk about yourself too much, for fear of kind of scaring the other person off,
I feel like you do after a certain point.
Yeah.
You're right. There is an initial period which can last quite a while where, I understand. Yeah. Like you're trying to win someone and then hold on to them. But then eventually you kind of figure out, oh no, they are invested enough in me. They like me enough that I can share some deeper shit with them.
Yes.
And they're not going to flee. And then that can be really fun.
Yeah. Some people get to that stage and some people don't. Like, I feel like, Eric and I, we talked about very sort of emotional things about ourselves very early on.
Right.
Because we kind of started off as friends, and then sort of things happened later. Yeah, but there is kind of, to a certain extent, you can kind of judge a person's personality by the context that it happens in.
The what happens in?
The things that they do in their life kind of give you a lens through which to kind of see what sort of person they are. So, like, looking at me, you couldn't tell that maybe I was a bit of a hippie or that I was a musician. But, like, you look at me, my hair is grey, it's not dyed, I'm wearing a kind of paisley shirt. I'm probably not going to be, a conservative, civil libertarian, Trump voter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So there are sort of things like that people can kind of, make assumptions about the deeper things in you based on the things that you do. Like, for example, like you volunteer at community radio. People could kind of make assumptions about that, oh, you're community-minded, you want to give back.
I'm a rat bag communist because it's triple Z.
Yep, you're a pinko leftist anarchist, Yeah, people can make assumptions based on kind of your habits and things like that. So there is a certain extent that, like, you don't always need to say everything, I guess. Or maybe my point is that your friends kind of know more about you than you think they do sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes what they know, like they can know a lot of superficial things, but not many deeper things. But then I think another factor of that is at what period of your life you became friends with certain people. Like if you've been friends with someone since high school, maybe in high school you weren't the sort of person who opened up yet, but you might have a more recent friend, like in the last few years, who you're much more open with about stuff. And so that's a bit of a weird thing too.
Yeah.
Like even though you've known someone for longer, there's some stuff you just still don't share with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you kind of get in that school mindset with that one person and you're like, oh, I can't talk about that with you. That's a now me thing. You're a past me person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I do have that to a certain extent. Of course, the one exception to that rule for me is Ash.
Yes.
Who is pretty much, the person who I'm pretty sure I will be buried next to if I'm buried next to anyone. Sorry, Eric. But I want to be cremated, so, maybe we'll be thrown into the stars together as, we're burned up.
Yeah. Shot out of a cannon, Hunter Thompson style.
Indeed, yeah. Do you think that actually happened?
Yeah, it did. Johnny Depp paid for it.
Yeah, the Ash and I, so when we were in high school, we were very different people,
From each other or from who you each are now?
From who we each are now, When we met, so we were about 12 or 13 years old, I think. I was very sort of shy, not shy, but like, as I said, like I'd only ever interacted with my family before and I was kind of still learning sort of social rules. It took me a long time to do that. So when I was 12, I was still kind of learning those rules and, wasn't quite sure how to be friends. And but I was always this kind of Labrador puppy, exuberant, so I would just kind of run up to people and hug them. I didn't know that's what you weren't supposed to do, Whereas Ash is very kind of insular and, or at least she was much more insular back then. She was very much like Daria, kind of sitting slumped against the wall with her glasses going, oh, yeah, that's okay. And up comes me going, hi, Ash, let's be best friends. And she's like, yeah, no. So whereas I used to sit in the library with the rest of the nerds, she would kind of sit outside with the other girls who liked Slipknot and also wore big thick glasses and yeah.
So how did you break through to Ash?
Well, it was kind of a gradual process of we were both in the same classes. And so we were always in English class and maths class and science class, and we were always both usually in the top, but Ash usually beat me because she was, she would study, and I just kind of showed up to class and went, woo, And it got to the stage when we were about year 9 or year 10. And I was always at the top of music. Music was always the one where I was at the top. And she was always just like, why can't I get there?
And that's why she became a drummer.
And that's why she became a drummer.
I'm sorry, Ash.
Because I crushed her dreams.
The joke was right there. No, sorry.
Ash, we love you. And also, you're the best drummer ever. Yes, I tell everyone that whenever I see them. But yeah, more than that, we were studying, as well as studying music classes, we also did musicianship clubs. So the AMEB exams, so they have sort of exams for instruments, exams for voice, exams for music theory, and then musicianship is kind of a mix of music theory and music performance kind of, so you... it's quite difficult and you have to do sort of 4-part vocal harmony writing and, you have to learn all the different cadences, all the different modes.
So that was the one class you would beat Ash in?
Yeah, well, that wasn't a class. That was kind of a club that we did after school. And then we just kind of found that, because at that time when I was 13, my mum had a nervous breakdown. And I kind of gradually joined all of the music clubs in school, because I found that when I was playing music, they kind of let me leave class and I was able to, do special things and, music, which was just fabulous. And so I gradually joined all the music ensembles I could, and then Ash also did the same thing. And then we started a percussion ensemble at our school, the two of us and one of the drum teachers and a couple of his students. And, it was quite fun there. I don't think it lasted very long, but we were all, with our little xylophones and, percussion sheet music. Yeah.
So did that bring Ash out of her shell?
Slightly. I mean, it's a really gradual process that you're talking about, to kind of go from that really insular person to the kind of person that Ash is today, who's happy to talk to people and she's got a lot of friends at work. Even through until she was about sort of 23 or 24, I think she was still, very scared to talk to people. And then kind of gradually through, her job and through, being in band with you, she kind of gradually broke out of that. But it has been a really long time, and it's something that she wasn't able to do when she first started her first degree at 18, she wasn't able to do that. I think she studied PR, first of all, which seems really counterintuitive. It just doesn't seem like Ash at all. But for some reason, she started doing this degree in PR, even though she hates talking to people. And then kind of like through the first year and a half, she realized, oh shit, this isn't really for me. And then she sort of stopped it, and then she changed to... I forget what she changed to. She studied so much.
I know, who can keep track?
Yeah, I mean, I know she's doing law now, and she did like medical coding, and yeah, I think she did media in there somewhere, and yeah.
So how do you think you changed from since when you were in high school? What was that slow progression? If you're not a Labrador now, what are you?
I think I'm still a bit of a Labrador. You know, like sometimes I walk past the dog park and there's just these kind of old kind of Labradors with bits of hair missing on their bums, and they're still there with these big happy smiles going, hi guys, hey world, I love yous. And that's still kind of me to a certain extent. But I think, you know, there was always like in the back of my mind, part of me was kind of worried about, you know, that I should try and do everything at once, and I should be so vital, and I've got to do everything because there's not enough time. I feel like now I've kind of calmed down a bit, and I'm just like, I should relax. You know?
I think that's part of both you and Ash have changed a bit. And I think everyone just changes like that in being an adult, in that they give fewer fucks as they get older, and they realize the things that aren't, that you don't actually have to care about.
Yeah.
Whether that's like people liking you or getting everything done at once or looking a certain way or whatever it is.
There's a great freedom when you turn 30 that you don't have to kind of be as, you know, you don't have to be stylish in the same way that you were in your 20s. Like once you're in your 30s, you're like, yeah, once I turned 30, I was like, fuck it, I'm going grey. I don't care.
Your hair looks awesome.
Thank you.
I think it's not a Brisbane thing, but more women in Melbourne have white and grey hair. I think it's yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to start the trend up here.
Yeah,
actually,
that's fucking cool.
A girl came up to me like a month ago. I was in an arts supply store, and she just came up and went, "Thank you so much for having grey hair. I have naturally grey hair and I dye it."
Oh,
and I was like,
awesome.
"Oh, you're welcome."
Yeah.
She was like, "You're young like me," and I was like, "Oh, honey." Not that young, honey, but thank you.
See, your grey hair actually makes you look younger.
Yes, yeah, which is good, you know, because I know so many people at my work who like dye their hair jet black and they're in their 60s, and I'm like, ooh, John, just let it go, mate. You know, don't, you know, standing there on the shore like King Canute trying to hold back the sea. Do you like my modern reference? Back there, sea. But the sea comes in and gets his feet all wet, and yeah. Read a book, people. But yeah, I think yeah, I have changed in that, you know, I listen to myself more and I listen to other people less. Like, I care about how I look, but I don't spend too much time on it, you know. As long as I'm happy with how I look, then I'm happy, and that's good. Also, I feel like as I've gotten older, I've listened less and less to my family. Now, like, I love my family. Don't get me wrong. They raised me, you know, my mum and my grandparents raised me. That doesn't mean they're perfect, you know, and there is part of me that kind of growing up, you know, and moving out of home and being away from home for so long, you know, and not just away from home in the same country, but away from home in other countries and having sort of different experiences and different kind of female role models and different mentors. I was able to sort of with more clarity, I was able to look at my family environment and go, yeah, that's a bit messed up, yo.
Was it a bit liberating being somewhat isolated? You know, today, you know, living in Japan is not super isolating in that you could pick up the phone and call your family at any time. But just being that far away, geographically, in a different culture where you're speaking a different language. Was that kind of exciting?
Yeah. Oh, of course, of course. Like, I mean, I can see how not everyone would find it exciting, but like, it's a very different set of social rules. I feel like I just kind of managed to get the hang of like Western social rules, like in school and high school and university. I just kind of managed to get that social contract right in my head. And then I started going to other countries, and there were whole different sets of social rules there, So the kind of social contract in Japan is something I'm very okay with. You have to be very considerate of the people around you and the space that you take up in the world. You have to really, think more about who you are and what your place is. And I feel that that's something that's often lacking in Australia. I go to places, or like I'm driving a bus and there's people having a really loud conversation. The thing that has begun to irk me is people doing like their telephone banking and paying bills on the bus.
Why would you do
on
that?
Speakerphone.
Why?
On speakerphone. I know. Why?
Aren't you like, are they saying like their PIN numbers out loud and stuff?
Yeah, well, I think that the people are like, they don't say their PIN numbers out loud, but they say like the 3-digit number on the back of the card out loud.
That's not safe.
And like, yeah, my customer number is 86. C for Carol. And it's like, oh my God, get some security. Stop it. Go home. Couldn't you do this at home? Did you have to do it on a public bus?
Yeah.
So the kind of that break in the social contract really kind of, irks me.
Yeah, no, that bugs me too.
Yeah.
I think more and more as I've gotten older, like noises, I'm more sensitive to that, like from neighbours and just people out in the world being, Australia is a wide open country with many wide open spaces, even in inner cities. But there's still that personal space thing of the airspace that people can invade with their voices and their music and their cars.
So many Australians don't get it. We lived in Japan for almost 3 years. We didn't hear a peep from our neighbours. We didn't hear anything. Like occasionally someone would drop a book upstairs, and that would be it.
I want to go there now.
Yes. I kind of want to go there just to get some sleep, Australians just don't have any concept of how loud they're speaking, and it's not just like children, as if children screaming weren't bad enough, but it's adults, or like it's two women like just having a chat over the fence and going,
tradies.
Tradies, blasting their radio through the day, and just shut up, Australia. I'm just going to have a public service announcement. It's just going to be me going, shut up, Australia.
I don't usually say when, like in mid-podcast when I found the title of the episode. But I found it right here.
You found the title for the episode?
Shut up,
Australia. Nobody wants to hear you. Go home. And when you get there, shh. So one of the questions that I had, so is empathy really what you think what we need the most right now? Is it really empathy that we need the most, or is there another quality that our society needs more of? Like, Burt Bacharach thought it was love. And then when he got older, he changed his mind,
Did he? What did he say later
I thought he
on?
changed his mind to conversation. What the world needs now is conversation. It doesn't sound as good in a
poor
song.
Bert, what happened, mate?
Yeah. Well, he thought, like talking was a way of like understanding each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the goal of that would be empathy, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, like, is empathy understanding? Are they the same thing? Are they interchangeable?
So empathy is being able to put yourself in another person's shoes and understand their circumstances, right?
Yeah, I guess for understanding, there's a kind of acceptance with that. Like, empathy is just saying, like, people feel that way. Understanding is like, people feel that way and I accept that. So it's like saying, okay, this person thinks that, Jews are taking over the world. They feel like that and I accept that. That's not my belief. I understand that they feel that way and I accept that. I can't change them. They don't want to be changed and I accept that.
But wouldn't you want the anti-Semites to have empathy? Because like they understand as well.
But you having empathy is not going to give them more empathy.
No, but it can, like, if you understand...
It's just going to make you feel better. You're not going to change them.
Well, if you're trying to be proactive, it might, if you understood why they think the Jews are going to take over the world. Like if they're from small town America and they're blaming a group of people for taking their jobs, for taking their jobs, sorry, and you figure out, and they're only exposed to certain media outlets and certain social circles, and they're from this economic environment, then I think empathizing in that case could be helpful. And then if you try and see where they're coming from, why they have this misunderstanding. And then, looking at the root causes of fixing that, I guess that might be helpful.
Yeah, it might be helpful. But I think often that is a big job, fixing middle America, because you would have to start from day dot and give them just adequate them. I'm just grouping them all into a big herd, but you would have to start to change hearts and minds is a big deal. You'd have to start with education, healthcare, adequate, roads and public services, water, electricity. There's just so much that formulates a person's view on life that you can't just change it overnight,
I do plan on getting there by episode 100.
Do you think they're listening to this much in Middle America?
No, that is beyond the scope of the podcast.
Yeah.
Specifically, yes.
So I plan to have all the world's problems fixed by episode 99. And then episode 100 is just a big party.
Yeah. On the 100th day I rest. In terms of what old Bert was saying, yes, I think conversation, just exposure to lots of different kinds of people is like a huge thing towards reducing prejudices, and that can build, I don't know, does it build empathy when you see that, Samir down the road is just he's just a bus driver as well and he's not a terrorist?
Yeah, well, that's absolutely one of the biggest things that they've found that makes people more tolerant of other races is actually just interaction, and interacting with people of other races and other cultures, And to a certain extent, yes, my job is good with that because they have a policy of proactively hiring people who came to Australia as refugees and, proactively hiring women and things like that, But there are still a lot of men. And it to a certain extent, it is a little bit of a boys' club. It is kind of changing, it was kind of changing slowly, but some of the women that were working there when I worked there originally have actually left. And yeah, I was a little bit sad about that.
Because of the boys' club?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame. And, it's a shame that the job, while they're kind of, they give lip service to kind of encouraging women and encouraging minorities, and then they're not actually doing that much to encourage women and minorities, and so the same people keep applying, Like they encourage
them in the job ads, but once they're in the job, they don't actually do anything to be inclusive.
Yeah. Or some people need time off for certain religious activities or things like that. Or they, like if you're a single mother, you might not be able to work full time, but you might still need like, you know, sick pay or something, you know, or like carer's allowance. And they don't actually give you like permanent part-time when you first apply. You have to do like 2 years of full time.
Oh man, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a little difficult. Like it would be a couple of subtle changes, you know, that would really help encourage, in my mind, would help encourage more women into the job, you know, which would, you know, probably help a lot of men with their views on women. Because, yeah, there are some men out there who just don't think very nice things about women. But honestly, like, toxic masculinity hurts men just as much as it hurts women.
Just as much.
Well, I mean, like, I guess because, you know, Eric and I talk about this a lot because he is kind of a victim of that, you know, like his dad was like an ex-army guy and sort of 6 foot tall, shoots rifles, a taekwondo black belt, you know, and, you know, here's Eric. He's kind of, you know, like he's roughly my height, you know, 170 centimetres. He's, you know, he reads books. He wants to be a librarian. You know, he's not exactly that kind of masculine idol. And the kind of rhetoric, I see all the time that he's so sensitive that he's not sort of masculine enough. You know, like he's not as masculine as his father is. And like he just doesn't have to be. You know, and I tell him this all the time. I'm like, you're perfect just as you are. Stop it. Stop being sensitive. Stop. Grow up. No, I don't do that. But you know, just if all men, maybe all men just need to hear that they're you know allowed to have emotions, and maybe if you know, young boys were allowed to sort of foster those parts of themselves that are creative and expressive, then there would be less, you know, instance of suicide among young men and, you know, less instance of violent crime, less instances of incarceration, you know. I know we're fixing the world's problems tonight, but let's take it one step at a time.
Yeah. Episode 100 is Insight. You have a lot of notes there.
Yeah, some of them are just ridiculous because I was just kind of chatting to Eric and I would sort of jot things down. So I have like notes like, what even is empathy?
Well, we covered that.
We covered that, yeah. And then I have like notes like cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
So cognitive dissonance, I was sort of thinking about, you know, denialists in particular.
Like Holocaust or global warming.
Yeah, like global warming deniers, because like for some denialists, like absolutely it might come from like a lack of information.
Mm-hmm.
And for some denialists, it could absolutely be that they just hold these antisocial beliefs and want to kind of justify them in a real way.
Yeah, and then some are like so pathological, you kind of wonder what sustains them, like the flat Earth crew, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I would love to talk to a flat earther on the podcast. Like how?
If you're a flat earther and you'd like to be on a podcast, please send an email to Scott Mercer at, I don't know what your email is.
gimmeempathypodcast@gmail.com. Yeah. Like, where does that come from? Because that's not based on any prejudice.
I'd say that flat earthers probably come from a suspicion of authority.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And in the same way that anti-vaxxers would kind of come from suspicion of modern medicine,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I think, like, a lot of people in my hometown, for example, are anti-vaccination, and it probably comes from this idea that, oh, Mother Nature has a plan, because they're all hippy-dippy lunatics out there. Hi, Mum. And, you know, they want to kind of think that there is this plan, you know, and that medicine is just, you know, counteracting Mother Nature's plan. But Mother Nature, you know, if Mother Nature's plan was for your child to die of whooping cough, that's a bit of a shit plan. You know, like maybe that's just me.
Maybe we could make some alterations to the plan.
Yeah, maybe we can fix up that plan, you know. Maybe, you know, Mother Nature wasn't really thinking about it, you know. Or maybe she was just thinking, you know, keep the population down and keep the humans, you know, in check, you know, in which case, yeah, good job.
Have you ever experienced cognitive dissonance?
Yes, and it was about gluten-free bread. I think it's called the halo effect, you know, if something is healthy in one way, that it's got to be healthy in another way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, you know, sometimes in Australia I would buy gluten-free bread and I'd be like, oh, yeah, it tastes like rock because it's good for me, you know, and it's healthy because it's gluten-free and it doesn't have any nasty gluten in it.
Do you have a gluten intolerance?
No.
Right.
No, of course not.
So
Most of the people who eat gluten-free bread don't.
So it makes no difference at all to you.
Makes no difference at all to me with my healthy bowel, you know. But here was me thinking, oh, because it's gluten-free, it's got to be healthy in other ways. But gluten-free stuff usually has more salt and more sugar than the regular product, than regular bread.
For the gluten.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I had that kind of the head wreck. I was like, oh no, I'm wrong. And then so once you've had that challenge, you've got, you know, the three choices. You can either deny it, change your belief, or try and justify your actions to yourself.
So what bread did you pick up?
I picked up the normal bread.
Yay.
You know, gluten-y bread, yeah.
You changed your actions.
I changed my actions, yeah. Because, you know, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. Here's a question for you. So, do you think empathy is in feeling, or does empathy have something to do with taking action on those feelings?
Oh, I think on its own it has to do with feeling and also thinking. I don't think it necessarily has to imply an action taken. I think that's the logical next step if you're trying to be a good person, that you would act on information as you get it that could help someone else. In this case, being able to see what they're going through. Not in and of itself, I don't think.
Okay, so it doesn't, you know, being empathetic doesn't mean you automatically have to go out and join the ACLU. You can just sit at home and feel good about being empathetic. Is that?
I mean, you can feel empathetic to the work, for example, the ACLU is doing, thinking, yeah, I understand why they're doing that. That's a good thing. I don't think that's necessarily connected to actually then going out and doing a good thing yourself. It should be.
Yeah, it should be.
But I don't think just by definitions, I don't think having empathy implies that.
Do you think that that's what we need more of now then? More action and less empathy?
Oh, I see. I don't think we need less empathy because you need empathy to get to that point. But you're right. Yes, more action.
Maybe we need to just get the Infinity Gauntlet and just, you know. Just saying. I'm just saying. I felt great empathy for Thanos. Talked to Ash, and she did too.
He was a very sympathetic character, I would say.
Really? Do you think he sympathized with people?
No, I mean as an audience member. They did a very good job of making him sympathetic.
Yes.
I don't know if they made him empathetic.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, they did a good job in that movie. So good. When Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. in the theatre when we were watching it, when Black Panther snapped out of existence, there was like all the women in the theatre just went, oh.
But that's also the point where you know, oh, okay, they're all coming back in the sequel.
I don't know if they'll all come back in the next sequel or the one after that, because I don't know. Part of me thinks that the people that have survived. Okay, so you look at the people who have survived. It's like most of the original crew.
Oh yeah, like Iron Man, Cap, Thor,
Black
Hulk?
Widow.
Black Widow.
Yeah. And part of me thinks that like maybe that crew is going to have to sacrifice themselves in order for the other people to come back.
Because they are the oldest actors who are probably sick of this shit by now.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Like Robert Downey Jr. and who's the Captain America one?
Chris Evans.
Yeah, so their contracts have both ended. And Chris Hemsworth has kind of talked about ending his. You know, I think he said Ragnarok was the most fun he'd had making a, MCU movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so their contracts are up. So
that might make sense.
Yeah, it might make sense. I don't know. It was something that occurred to Eric and I, because he has read a lot of the comics, and he said it would make sense if they were not dead, but in the shadow realm.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a theory that in the next movie, like you are going to see all the people, but just like half of the ones who quote unquote died are just going to be in some shadow realm, and they have to find a way out. And Iron Man has to find a way to undo the snap and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, like Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah. Because he said this is the only way.
Yeah, this is the only way, and the only way meant Iron Man had to be alive. Because he stops Thanos from killing Iron Man.
Yeah, and of course Captain Marvel's going to come through time and save them all. And
Yeah. Oh my God, are you so excited for Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. Yeah.
Yes, the very first female MCU movie. Yeah.
I saw Brie Larson in. I watched Kong Skull Island the other day.
Oh my God, I just watched that today.
Really?
Yes. We prepared.
That's a silly outing. I mean, it's a movie that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been kind of watching, in preparation for the next Godzilla movie that's going to come out. I've been going back through all the old kaiju movies. And so, because I hadn't seen the most recent Godzilla one with Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Oh my God.
I mean, Godzilla was great. The battles were cool. Humans were annoying.
Yeah. Like Ken Watanabe and Bryan Cranston and Godzilla, the three things I wanted to see the most in that movie, I saw the least.
Yeah.
And then I was like, who is this white man? I don't care about him. And, and here's this woman who apparently had to raise her son as while her husband was off at war, and is still able to hold down a full-time job as a nurse with no additional help. Like, I just didn't buy it, Like, the monsters, yeah, I buy, because, I love that, Godzilla has always had kind of environmental themes to it and really strong kind of environmentalism underpinning it. And I just felt that one was just like monster.
Yeah.
Monster.
Anytime I think all the Western versions have been just monster.
Yeah. And they've just kind of lost that sort of subtlety of narrative,
Yeah.
And I showed Eric Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, like the first of the Heisei era of Godzilla movies.
Is that like 70s?
It's like late 80s.
Late 80s, okay.
Yeah. And in that movie, like, Eric was just like, what is this? What is this? You know, bad model shots. You know, we're not outside. That's a studio. But anyway, put aside the quality of the monsters for 1 second. There's a really strong story in that about when you mess with the balance of nature, you've got to be careful to not kind of push it too far the other way. You know, so in that one, like, people come from the future and say, "Oh, you need to kill Godzilla because then, like, Godzilla will take over the world." And so they're like, "Oh, okay." So they sort of try and get rid of Godzilla, and then they're like, "Oh no, actually we needed Godzilla because, you know, he was going to save Japan. And, you know, in the future Japan would have been subjugated to America, you know." And so they're like, "Okay, we need to go back to the 40s and, like, give Godzilla, like, nuclear radiation to make him bigger." So they do that, and then they're like, "Oh shit, Godzilla's bigger now. What are we gonna do?" So they bring back King Ghidorah, and Godzilla defeats him once, so they give him, like, mechanical head and mechanical wings, and he becomes Mecha King Ghidorah. And then in the end, Godzilla goes back to the sea, and it's beautiful. And then it paves the way for Godzilla versus Mothra, which is the next movie after that, which is just beautiful.
Where did that metaphor end up?
It was, I don't know. I don't care. Mecha King Ghidorah. It got lost somewhere around, like, Mecha King Ghidorah. It was like, something like, you know, protect the environment for the future. That's usually that's the basis of the kaiju movies, is like, don't mess up your oceans, don't mess up your land, or Godzilla will come and, you know, blast lasers at you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's basically...
That's basically how everyone should live their life.
It's how everyone should live their life. Don't mess up, Godzilla will eat you. And you should be afraid of Godzilla. Yeah.
And thanks for coming on the podcast again.
Thank you. I hope there's something you can edit together here. Do you think there's something?
Thanks for listening to episode 40 of Gimme Empathy. And it may interest you to know that after recording this conversation, the next time I got on a bus, I made eye contact with the driver and I smiled, and I was rewarded with the bus driver complimenting me for waiting at exactly the right spot at the busway. Apparently she'd never had anyone wait at exactly the right spot before. The right spot, by the way, at Brisbane busways is on the strip of darker grey tiles with the circle things on them that make them look like Lego blocks. So there you go. I have empathy acquired, and I've been making an effort to give eye contact to bus drivers ever since. So well done, Ange. We did it. A note for this week's episode, or rather a confirmation. It is true that Johnny Depp spent $3 million on a ceremony honouring the life of his friend Hunter S. Thompson after his death that included the late author's ashes being shot out of a cannon from the top of a 47-metre tall tower constructed at his property in Woody Creek, Colorado. There's actually a bit of footage of it on YouTube, shot by someone with what looks like a pretty poor quality VHS camera. There's fireworks and all sorts of, there's sort of plans of how they're going to do it and all that. Apparently it was a very star-studded event. John Kerry and Benicio del Toro and lots of other people were there. I've got a recommendation for you this week. I've just been getting into this new podcast, and I thought I'd share it all with you because it reminds me of a little bit of this one in some ways. It's called Armchair Expert, and it's hosted by the actor Dax Shepard, who you might have seen in, what would you have seen him in? Idiocracy or Parenthood. And he's married to fellow actor Kristen Bell from Veronica Mars and The Good Place. And it's a conversation podcast, and he has on mostly other Hollywood friends of his. But what I kind of find refreshing is sort of how openly he talks about the experience of being famous with other famous people. And he's a self-reflective guy, and I don't agree with him about everything. And in the early episodes, he tends to talk over his guests a lot, which really bugs me. But it is quite interesting. And he also has a corrections segment at the end of his podcasts that he does, or rather, that he has a friend of his fact check for him. So if I had the budget, I would also employ a fact checker, but I don't. Anyway, so check that out. Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. All right, episode 40 out. See you next time. Until then, stay on top of it. Whatever it is, stay on top of it.